Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Penn Foster's 2019 Student Success and Career Fair. My name is Kristen, and I will be handing the controls over to Dara. She is our COO, and she will be presenting on how to interview like a boss. So, this is an extremely amazing session to listen to, very informative, and I think it will help you out quite a bit. But first, let's take a moment to ensure that everybody is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. Um, on the right side of your screen, you will see your control panel there. There is an orange button there, an orange arrow where you can minimize and maximize that screen so that you can have a full screen view of the presentation. Uh, Also, you'll see a questions box. So if you have any questions, excuse me, during the webinar or afterwards, Dara will be happy to answer your questions. Please know that this session is being recorded, and you will be sent a copy of the recording about an hour afterwards. You'll get your certificate of attendance. We'll be sending you a survey as well, and a copy of the recording. So if you have any questions as a follow-up, you can contact us. I'm pleased to present Dara, and I will be turning over the controls to her so that she can present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me this morning? I hope so. So this is an interesting test because I have lost a little bit of my voice. So if that happens when you're about to interview, we can talk a little bit about what to do there. So I am going to take over controls for the presentation. Just give me 1 minute. Great. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'd love to take a quick poll to see how many people have joined us so we can see how many people are on the phone this morning. Welcome to How to Interview Like a Boss. I'll give you 1 second to respond and vote if you're on the phone. Today, we're going to talk about how to interview with confidence so you can land the job of your dreams. Preparing for an interview is just like preparing for an exam at school. It takes work, it takes preparation, it takes thought. I'm going to share some tips on what to think about and how to think about it. So stay with me. Kristen already showed us what to do with the control panel, so we should all be set there. A little bit about me. My name is Dara Warren. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Penn Foster. I've been with the organization for about 70 years. I probably conduct about 50 to 100 interviews a year, so I have a lot of practice on what works well and what doesn't. And I'm really passionate about helping people find and excel in career paths, so I'm excited to share this with you this morning. What we're going to talk about is how really understanding how interviews are conducted, the depth of questions, and the expectations around how you're supposed to perform an interview and how it might differ based on the settings that you're interviewing for. My goal is to show you how to interview for the job of your dreams and some examples of just how it's done. We're going to cover dressing for success, really understanding who you're speaking to, how you can learn about the company, and really just a reminder to relax and to show your skills. So what is an interview? An interview is a conversation where questions are asked and answers are given. Typically, the word interview refers to one-on-one conversation between an interviewer and an interviewee. However, there can be a group interview. If you are setting up for an interview, your firm should tell you whether it's a one-on-one interview or a group interview. If it's something that you have a question on, feel free to ask, because that's definitely something that you'd want to prepare for, whether it was a one-on-one or a group interview. And we're going to talk about how to prepare for these conversations. First topic is dressing for success. So on this page, we have the same individual dressed very differently. Now, first of all, I don't want you to think that you can't share some of your own personal style in an interview. You absolutely can. But there are certain things you should think about when you're dressing for an interview. We're going to cover them today. First is how to think about dressing professionally. Whether you're interviewing at a surf shop, or you're interviewing at a restaurant, or you're interviewing for an office job, you want to be neat and clean. There's a difference between showing your personal style and being dirty without your hands washed and things like that. These are obvious things, but it is a good reminder. You want to think about your entire package: the clothes, your shoes, your hair, how everything fits together. Obviously, this is probably something does need to be reminded, but definitely try to have fresh breath. What I've noticed is there's a lot people are in interviews and they're talking and talking and talking a lot. Ask for water. If you're in 6 hours of interviews, you might need some water. You might need just a break to get yourself freshened up. The key important thing is really to be yourself. So what not to wear? Pretty much don't wear flip-flops, ripped jeans, short shorts, shorts that are too short, pants that are too low so that your underwear is showing, shirts that are low cut, and any clothing with slogans, including swears that are political, drug-related, etc. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, my surf shop example, if you're interviewing to be a lead salesperson at a surf shop and the attire is shorts and flip-flops, you should dress professionally. Now, I would still suggest that if you are dressing for a surf shop, maybe the first time you go in, you wear shorts but closed-toe shoes. You just want to show the interviewer that you're taking this job seriously, that whatever they ask of you, you'll be willing to do, and that might mean compromising your personal style. What you wear outside of work doesn't need to be the same that you wear inside of work. If you're interviewing to work in a veterinary practice as a vet technician, maybe visit the practice, see what they're wearing, ask what the right interview attire is. Obviously, you'll probably be wearing scrubs when you're on the job, but I wouldn't necessarily show up for that first interview in scrubs. The important thing to note is know your setting. Avoid the controversial sayings and materials. I always find that it's a good question to ask before you show up. Ask your recruiter, what is the dress code? What is expected? What will be the dress code when I'm on the job? Be clean. And another nice tip is to avoid too much perfume or cologne. You don't want someone to remember you for the scent that you leave in the room after the conversation. So typical interview attire, and again, I say typical because it's generally what people wear, would be a suit and a tie for traditional male, dress shoes, dress pants, and a blazer. For traditional female, it could be a suit, a skirt and blouse, a workday dress, shoes or boots, pantyhose or tights. Now, I will say that in most settings, it's not expected for men to wear a full suit and tie. Typically, I suggest that men wear a shirt, dress pants, and a blazer, and bring a tie with them should they need something. But it's nice to wear a jacket if you're signing up for an office interview. It just shows that you put the extra mile in, even if that's not the attire. Now, if you're interviewing at a super, low stress tech company and they say to you, listen, don't show up in a suit. You won't go over well. I'm not sure if any of you have seen the movie Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, but Steve Carell shows up at a tech company wearing a suit and he kind of looks out of place. But it's really important to just kind of understand your surroundings and what you can do. Typically, for a female, you can't go wrong in a workday dress. It's not too formal like a suit, but it's not too casual. like pants, pretty much I'd suggest not showing up in jeans. You want to show your interviewer that that you're prepared and that you've put extra thought into showing up for that day. As I mentioned around preparation, really the next section is around doing your research. Preparation is the key. You will be confident in any interview setting if you take the time ahead of time to prep for the experience. So here's 7 strategies that I've seen work for acing your interview. The first is, know your special sauce. Other people say know your hook. Know what makes you unique and stand out for what you want to stand out for. So for example, if you're going to be working in a medical office building or setting, you can tie that to something in your personal life. So you're really excited to be there because you have a family member that works in a medical office setting, or you've always been passionate about healthcare. If you're going to work in a vet practice, you can tie that to what you've done in your day-to-day life. For Penn Foster, we're an education company. I talk to a lot of people that show up for the interview excited because they've had a parent or a sibling or another family member who spent their whole career in education, and this really brings it full circle for them. The next is know the job you're applying for. You don't want to use your interview as purely discovery. Obviously, you should be prepared with questions, and some of those questions can be about the job. But you should do some research ahead of time to really know what this job is. There are a ton of useful resources out there from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, even job sites like Indeed or Monster, even company websites that have the jobs that are posted. They should give you some details on what the roles and responsibilities are. If it's a job that you could actually look at, so if you're applying to work in a restaurant or a office, like a vet practice or a technician's office, you can maybe go and scout it out, like take a look around and see, what's expected and see what some of the employees do. So it's okay to, spend some time understanding what that job is. It also will help you understand why you would be a good fit, right? The interviewer only has so much time with you. And what they're really trying to understand is not just do you have the right qualifications, but are you going to be a good fit for this job and for this company? And a lot of that sometimes comes down to, how much passion you have for it, how much interest you have in that role and how much curiosity you're bringing to the table. The next is know about the company. You should really understand what the company is, who their competitors are, any recent news events that the company might have announced. So for example, if your company recently acquired another business, you should know that. It's very easy to do a Google search and look for news, go to the company's website and look for recent press articles. Just spend some time searching, looking around. And if the company's big enough, there might be position articles written on the company that you could read and reflect on. The next is prepare questions as a follow-up. So obviously, in the next few pages, we're going to talk about some of the questions you should be prepared for, but you should also come with a list of questions. I'm always impressed when someone comes with a notebook that has 10 to 15 questions on them. They might have checked them off once they've gotten to me as the 4th or 5th interviewer, but it shows that they've put a lot of thought into those questions. In particular, if you're given a list of the people you're going to be interviewing with ahead of time, it's nice to be able to tag questions to those people. Typically, if you are interviewing with 4 or 5 people, you might get the title of that individual. So that will allow you to come up with questions specific to that individual. I suggest practice. The more you practice, the more you'll relax and the more you'll be confident. Practice does make perfect in these settings. You don't want the first time you're responding to certain answers to be in a high stakes setting. Spend some time practicing. At the end of the day, be honest, be yourself. That authenticity will come through. A lot of times I'm most impressed by the people that are most authentic about their background, their experiences, and why they want the job. Let's talk a little bit about research. I mentioned it earlier, but do research online about the company and about the job. Review the job spec and be prepared to talk about how your skills match the job. There are many different websites. Obviously Google is a treasure trove of information. There are recent news articles and business changes. I find looking up who I'm interviewing with on LinkedIn or other sites very helpful. I can tell who they're connected to if I have anyone in my network that's connected to them, and really spend some time on the company websites and understanding those job details. The next is really around knowing your interviewer. You might not go through this step for everyone, but if you're going to be interviewing with a future boss, really learn what's publicly available. I'm not saying doing any unnecessary stalking. I'm saying look and use the resources that are publicly available to you. Think about how this position and your experience relates to that person. Did you go to the same school? Had you worked previously at the same company? Do you have similar hobbies and interests or different? Your interviewer is not necessarily looking for someone just like themselves, but as I mentioned earlier, you're trying to find that hook or that connection if one is there. It would be strange if you found out that the person you're interviewing with, graduated the same class in the same year from a certain school as you. If you didn't do that prep ahead of time, they might feel like you really missed something. Or maybe you worked at the same company a few years ago. It's really just helpful to know what's in front of you by spending some time looking around. And it's really important to be your own person. Bring your own unique perspective, but bring it in relation to the company that you're interviewing for, the job that you're interviewing for, and the person that you're interviewing with. So your interviewer is going to make sure that you're the right fit. They're going to ask a series of open-ended questions to help them understand this fit. Typically, an interviewer will ask 10 or so questions. They might not always be the same, but generally someone has 10 questions that they like to answer. I've prepared a list of 50, or I haven't prepared a list of 50. I noticed that Glassdoor did a survey of thousands and thousands of interviewers and came up with a list of 50 most common questions. And I'm going to provide them to you so that you can use them as practice. Here are the 50 top interview questions. The ones that I highlighted are, this one I think comes up most of the time. Why are you interested in working for us? A not so good answer is, well, I saw it posted and I figured why not? Or I have nothing going on and this is my last resort. That's not going to make the interviewer feel like you're really in this for the long haul and that you're going to bring your best self to the job. Why are you interested in working for us could be everything from this is my dream job to I've always been interested in this field to this is a new field for me. I'm really curious to I'm really impressed with the work you've done in X, Y, and Z, and I'd like to be a part of it. This is a hard question. What are the 3 things your former manager would like you to improve on? Now, it's always helpful to be able to reflect and say what you could do better. Don't use this as an opportunity to say all of the terrible things that you might have done or all of the ways that your former manager didn't like what you did, how you performed. I think some good answers to this are, my former manager probably would have said, I didn't know as much about this topic. I could have learned more. Or the company was always looking for people to improve on customer service. I dramatically improved. I always had very high scores, but that was an area where you were never finished. Really try to find something that isn't necessarily a negative, but shows growth within an organization. Or, at my former company, we were always trying to, it was an auto repair company, and we were always trying to find the problem within a short amount of time. We all started at, it took us 40 minutes, and then by the end, I was doing 20 minutes, and that was an area that I improved upon and we were excited about. So try to use this as an opportunity to show growth in your former job that you could bring to this job. No one is expecting you to be perfect, but they are expecting you to show growth and self-reflection that you could bring to a new role. This is another one that I think comes up a lot. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. So I always like to tell a story. One of my first jobs, I was in marketing and I was responsible for proofreading a letter. And I was trying to invite people to an event. I was trying to say, this is an event you will not want to miss. But I actually said, this is an event you will want to miss. And it was sent out to 10,000 people. So obviously not a great marketing message to tell people that they should go to an event and this is one they should miss. It was a mistake that I made. I identified the mistake. I apologized. And I spent a lot of time over the next few months proofreading and extra checking. And it's something that's sort of been with me forever. Like I always take extra time to check. It's okay to make mistakes, but you have to be able to learn from them. And so really think about a time where you made a mistake and you were able to learn from it. The next question that comes up, I'm not sure, I haven't been in a lot of interviews. This isn't a question that I ask, but describe yourself. I sometimes ask, what would your coworkers say about you? Or how would your boss describe you as a worker? So you don't have to think about describing yourself as kind of you, your full package human, but describe yourself in a work setting. It could be, people tend to think of me as someone that is always willing to chip in. So I'm always someone that, is eager to learn new things. I'm often seen as someone that's curious about new topics. I'm seen as a good team member. So think about things that are related to the work you're going to be doing, and think about how to describe yourself in that way. This one I often ask because I want to know sort of why they're sitting in front of me, but why are you looking for a new job? Why is this the right time? And why do you want to work here? So really think about how to answer that question. It can be, I haven't been working, or, I was finishing my degree or my certificate and I'm now ready for a new job. I was focused on my training and now I'm focused on work. Those are okay. You don't have to be working. It's okay to say that you were laid off, or, you no longer have a job and you're really eager to get back into the workforce, but just have an answer, a thoughtful answer for why you're sitting in front of them. Now these questions come up if you're in a customer service setting. And we find this a lot, whether you're, in a technician job where you're showing up at someone's house to fix something, or you're in a retail or hospitality setting. But how would you deal with an angry or irate customer? Really think about that, right? Think about how you would respond to that. Obviously, good answers are you'd really try to understand the problem. You try to help empathize with what the situation is, and you try to help them not be as angry and really know that you're their advocate. I use this question a lot, number 35 here. What gets you up in the morning? It's really, people want to know what you're passionate about. They want to know why you're here and how you can bring that passion to the job. It could be, my kids, my dog. That's okay. It doesn't have to be a work-based answer. If people know, you're really passionate about animals and that's why you get up in the morning, that's great. Maybe that passion can translate into a part of the job that you're, bringing to the table. So I think, it's really important to be thoughtful. Pick a few of these. You don't have to know all, you don't have to go through all of them, but based on how many interviews you're doing, you might get versions of these questions, and they're sort of good to have in your back pocket so that you can have an answer to some of them. I would also say a good technique is if you don't have an answer immediately, what works really well is if someone asks you a question, say, how do you handle pressure? You don't have a good answer for that. It's always helpful to say, you know what, that's a really good question. It buys you some time to be able to give a really good answer. You don't have to jump right into an answer. It's okay to be thoughtful. It's okay to take a minute. It's okay to say, you know what, I need to think about that for a minute. I've not heard that question before, but it's a really good one. Just fill the air with some reflection so that they know that you're compiling your answer. I'm just going to cover one more, but always have questions prepared for your interviewer. So this last one, what questions do you have for me? 100% of the time I ask that question because it helps me understand what they're curious about, what they might be concerned about, and what drivers they have for the job. If you as the interviewer are always asking questions and getting responses to your questions, you don't really know what's top of mind for the interviewee. So 100% of the time I ask number 50. So I would typically be prepared for that. We covered it a bit earlier. So the next section I wanted to talk a little bit about is, how do you practice? What does it mean to practice for an interview? Because it's not something you can necessarily replicate. So I suggest a mock interview with a friend or a family member. If that's uncomfortable for you or too embarrassing, you can also do it with a video or camera, or really just right into the mirror. Just practice. Spend some time saying things out loud. Spend some time taking notes. I typically like to take notes on my computer. I use Evernote and I write a ton of things down. Other people like to take notes on paper. Find the medium that really works for you, but just prepare the content, prepare in advance, and then really think about how you want to present yourself. Another tip, which we'll cover later, always look at the interviewer in the eye. If you're having a conversation with someone, you want to make eye contact, you want to connect with them. Be human, be natural. As much as this isn't a natural setting, you want to try to make it as natural and comfortable as possible, because it will help the interviewers see how you react to some uncomfortable situations. So in preparing some questions, here's some different different lines you can think about building upon. What is a day in the life of the job? What type of roles does this role interact with? Has anyone previously been in this role, and what made them successful? Another set of questions can really be around, what is your hiring process? What steps do I need to go through? What else do you need from me? This is always a good one. It shows that you're thinking about career progression, but what have others in this job, gone? Where have others in this job gone within the organization? Have people in this job moved on to different roles, and what can I learn from that? It's really important to sort of not talk about certain things. Interview is not a good time to talk about vacation time, sick time, or other jobs you're interviewing for. Those can be discussed with a recruiter. Those can be discussed when you've made the offer. They're just not the right questions to ask during an interview. The interview is about your fit with the job and the company's fit with you. It's not about how much sick time there is. It's not about how much vacation time there is. You should probably do some of that during your discovery, or be prepared to do it really after the interview. Another important thing to think about is, how are you going to get there? Don't leave it to the day of and just say, well, it typically takes me 27 minutes, so I'm going to leave myself 30. Don't do that. Now, first of all, bring some things. Bring a notepad and a pen. I've seen some people bring iPads. Whatever you're most comfortable with, just make sure that it has notes in it, questions, so that it shows that you've prepared. Bring the list of prepared questions that we've talked about. Bring directions so you know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, maybe do a dry run. If you're going to a large office park, parking might be an issue. Sometimes I've seen visitor parking up front. Sometimes you're really just scrambling for parking. Just always build in some time. Make sure to know the name of the person you're asking for. If it's a difficult name to pronounce, that's okay. I would try to practice and figure it out, but know the name of the person. Bring copies of your resume or other documents. Bring a driver's license or photo ID. Depending on the office, you might have a security desk where you have to give your photo ID, or you might just be walking into an office setting or to a retail setting. Just bring these things and be prepared. People like to see that you're prepared, and you don't want to be caught off guard on the day of your interview. I always try to arrive early. I try to arrive at the location probably 30 minutes early, but you probably want to walk in about 10 minutes early. If you're in an interview 30 minutes early, you're probably just going to sit in the lobby or, sit outside someone's office. It might not be the most comfortable. Get to the location, know the location, know how much time it takes to get through, and then, show up about 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting time. Thinking about this again, I'd suggest 10, not 5. It's really, first impressions are important during an interview. Here are some tips in making a good first impression. As I mentioned, look your interviewee in the eye. Have a firm handshake if that's part of the dialogue. Listen to what they're saying and remain focused. They might give you a big overview of the company. Make sure you're listening to that, taking down keywords, and then using that as you repeat back to them and as you answer some of their questions. Choose your words wisely. Just think about, you don't want to say things like, well, I didn't like my old boss because. I think there's other ways to talk about conflict, and, either using blaming type terms or you're trying to push responsibility on someone else. Just really think about the words that you use. That's another good reason to practice. As always, stay calm and take your time. You don't have to answer quickly. You don't have to be, the first to answer within 2 seconds. It's okay to take your time. Use some of the tips that I talked about, saying things like, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. Or that's a really good question. Here's how I handled it. Just use some of those fillers to help you compose your answer. At the end of the day, be confident. You're likely applying for a job that you've prepared for, that your Penn Foster training has prepared you for, and you're going to kill it. You're going to win. You're going to you can see yourself in that kind of winning position. Like visualize where you want to be and really use that to help build confidence. Another important part is thinking about how to follow up. So once you've left the interview and left that day, it's not over. First of all, ask about the hiring process. Ask about a timeline, like when should you expect to hear from them? What's next? And then afterwards, send a thank you email. You can even send a thank you card. I find emails to be more immediate and more impactful, but it really depends on the setting that you're in. I just like the idea of having, an email in someone's inbox at the end of the day that I interviewed. It shows that I'm thinking about it, shows that I've taken time to prepare, and it shows that I really, am eager to hear back from them because I'm I'm responding relatively quickly. So hopefully you found some good, tips and tricks during this interview. I appreciate your time. And, I'm open to taking any questions that you guys have. Let me know. It looks like we have about 90 people on this webinar, so that's great. Hopefully you're interviewing from a range of different, jobs and opportunities. And I'd love to hear more about the types of settings that you're interviewing for. The next time we can maybe tailor this to a healthcare setting or a veterinary setting or a business setting. Great. It looks like I've got a question here that just came in. So the question is, how do you dress if you're going into a repair job? So if I'm looking to be an HVAC, do I really wear a suit to that interview? I think that's a really good question. I think the key is to be professional, to be neat, and to be clean. I think that you can still show up in, clean cut pants, a button up shirt, not necessarily with a suit and tie, but look that you've prepared for the job. In any kind of technician job, you're going to be dealing with customers. And I think that the firm is going to want to see that you can present yourself well to customers, no matter what you're wearing. Looks like I have one more question here. And the question is, do you, how many questions is it appropriate to ask your interviewer? That's a really good question, actually. So I would say I like to try to prepare 5 to 7 questions for every person that I'm interviewing with. I wouldn't necessarily go through them all. I don't know that the interviewer wants to feel like it's rapid fire, answer all of these like 5 to 10, but they want to make sure you're filling the time. You should be conscious of the time as well. If your interviewer is set for an hour, you should have enough questions to be able to fill that hour. And so think about what it might look like. You also might come up with questions during your dialogue because you'll learn things that you hadn't really thought about before. That's why it's also helpful to have kind of a pen and paper. So if someone says something and it sparks another question, you can write down a reminder word that will really help you be able to answer that question. I think it looks like the questions we have for today. So I want to thank everyone for joining me. Thank you for the time. Hopefully you've learned how to interview like a boss so that you get the job of your dreams. We're always here to help. And, I would say the key things to remember are practice makes perfect, and really try to, do your research ahead of time so that you know about the job, know about the people, and know about the company that you're going to be interviewing for. Thank you all. I appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.